أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
حي على الصلاة.
لا حول.
حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح.
لا حول ولا قوة.
حي على الفلاح.
لا حول.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة أدى الأمانة نصح الأمة كشف الغمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده وتركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. وصلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار على نهجهم واقتدى بسنتهم وهديهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in his book, Surah Al-Baqarah, actually at the middle of Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 143, he said, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. Which means, and so we made you believers, stuck it to the believers, to all of you, and so we have made you a middle ummah, which means over here an upright community, upright and just community, so that you may be witness over humanity, you may be witness over humanity, and that the messenger may be witness over you. Please remember this ayah. Remember this ayah as it will be the core of our subject today, which is citizenship in Islam, al-muwatana fil Islam. And let me go back a little bit to connect the dots with you and to answer the question, why are we talking about this subject today? Why are we talking about the citizenship in Islam today? If you recall, in the previous few khutbah, I started to share with you some of the lessons learned from the entire khutbah series, because we finished the whole series which entitled Immigration and Integration, Al-Hijra wal-Indimaj, and which we covered in this masjid over the last 2 years. So at the end of that series, I started to give some lessons related to the entire series. Crucial lessons that will help us to create a roadmap in building the Muslim community identity. Because until now, we didn't build the Muslim community identity. We need to build that by following the footsteps and the methodology of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and what he did in his immigration into Medina. Building a Muslim community identity that contributes effectively, not only for the Muslims, but to contribute effectively to the reform and development of our country, Canada. In previous khutbah, I covered 3 of those top 5 lessons that I would like to share with you. I covered 3 of them. And just to remind you, the first one was that I learned from that series and from the actions of Prophet Muhammad in the Medina, I learned that addressing society's major issues is part of da'wah. And there's a huge misconception about that part, because we think the da'wah only to call the people to Allah. But if you follow the track of all the prophets that they mention in the Quran, part of their da'wah was to solve side by side. When they called to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, side by side, they were solving a major issue for their people. As our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the final messenger from Allah, and his message, Islam, is the final and the most comprehensive message from Allah, so part of his da'wah was to reform multiple major issues in all aspects of life. Not one issue like the previous prophets, but multiple issues in social, economic, educational, political, health, environmental, media, and family. And we saw that and what he did in the Medina in all these aspects. This brought us to the second exciting lessons that I learned for the first time from looking to the seerah from that perspective. That Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he executed all these multiple comprehensive reforms. He executed them simultaneously, rather than sequentially. He initiated phases 1 of all the 10 projects that I managed to count it, within the first few months of his arrival to the Medina. And this included building the masjid, if you recall, and initiating the education and media reform within the masjid, then establishing the brotherhood, then setting up the Medina's market, writing the Medina's document, al-wathiqa. Then he initiated in parallel within that document also, order what is right and forbid the wrongdoing and make it part of the social culture. Additionally, he started also to work on the family, health, and environmental reforms. All the initial phases of these 10 projects were initiated in the first 4 to 6 months of his arrival to the Medina. And that's what really surprised me. This was his methodology in building the Muslim community identity that we are missing right now, and we are not practicing right now. Maybe some of us talking about the comprehensive of Islam, but there is a huge mistake in our approach, in the methodology, how we build that community, that we need to work in parallel. He did not focus on building the masajid and the schools for the first 20 years, and then move to the economy, then politics, then health, then environment. That was not his methodology. His methodology, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for building the Muslim community identity was simultaneously rather than sequentially. And this, by itself, raised to me and to all of you a major question. How can these objectives be achieved in today's context? How we can work in parallel and simultaneous in all these issues? Because of limited resources and licensing restriction, there is no such an Islamic organization can implement all these comprehensive reforms simultaneously. And the answer for these questions is in the remaining 3 lessons, because I told you 5 lessons and only I shared with you 2 lessons. So the remaining 3 lessons, those are the keys. And those what the Prophet ﷺ, he focused on in the Medina. And we are not practicing it right now. The first one is the ummah work. Ummah work. The second one, citizenship in Islam, which is our subject today. And the third one, the collaborative leadership. The principle of ummah work, not ummah talk. Ummah work, not ummah talk, was discussed in my previous khutbah, the farewell khutbah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you can refer to it last month. And I considered it's the core principle that will enable us to access specialized resources of the Muslim community to support a wide range of reform projects simultaneously. Today, inshallah ta'ala, and the next month khutbah, inshallah, I will focus on the 4th crucial lesson, which is citizenship in Islam. This is why I'm talking about citizenship in Islam. Many Muslim immigrants, they lack clarity regarding this concept, and they think that this is contradicting with Islam. And this is why they don't perform it in a proper way, which I considered one of the main reasons for the weak integration and interaction of the Muslim community with the Canadian society, whether in da'wah, in reform and contribution in political, economic, media, social, educational, and environmental aspects. It's important to note that when I talk about integrating over here in the Canadian society, please don't go to the extreme. We are Ummah Wasat. Please don't go to the extreme. I don't mean by that a dissolution, the waba, and loss of Islamic identity. That I call it a negative, this type of integration, I call it a negative integration. What I mean, what I'm referring over here to, is a positive integration, which involves actively participating in the reform, the advocacy, and contribution to the Canadian society while preserving our Islamic identity. Citizenship in Islam, al-Muwatana fil Islam, has a fiqh section. There is a fiqh section called fiqh al-Muwatana, the fiqh of citizenship, or the fiqh of residency even. Because before there were no citizenship, there were residency. Any place that you reside in, you should contribute over there. And that type of fiqh, the fiqh of residency, or fiqh of citizenship, it falls under a broader sector. We call it, in the Sharia, we call it fiqh al-siyasa al-shar'iyya. Fiqh al-siyasa al-shar'iyya. The fiqh of Sharia politics. And only few scholars who can be counted on your hands have written about that area of fiqh. Starting from Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah was the first one who was talking about the siyasa al-shar'iyya. While thousands of scholars are specialized in the different type of fiqh, like fiqh al-ibadat, fiqh al-muamalat, the fiqh of worship, and the fiqh of dealings, and other type of fiqh. Due to the importance of the subject and the lack of time that I have in my khutbah, I will divide this topic into two khutbah. In today's khutbah, inshallah, I will discuss the Muslims' nation role as a witness on the other nations, using the ayah that I began with in my introduction, and this I will use it as an introduction for citizenship in Islam. And inshallah, in the next khutbah, I will talk more details about the Islamic perspective of citizenship, about the duties, about the rights, and also about the guidelines of that type of contribution. My dear respected brothers and sisters, once again to the ayah, just to remind you, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And so we have made you believers a middle ummah, an upright community, so that you may witness over humanity, and the messenger may be witness over you. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned to us that one of the honored duties that He blessed this ummah with is to be witness on the people and on the nations from the time of Adam alayhi salam until the day of judgment. This is an honor. It has not been given to any nation except for the Muslim nation, as stated in the Quran. And He prepared us for that honored duty, which is the witness over all the other nations, by making us a middle ummah. Making us a middle ummah, which means upright and just ummah. So, what is the meaning of middle ummah? And what is the meaning of witness ummah? I will try to focus on those two elements in a brief way. The concept of middle ummah, and that concept I can cover it in multiple lectures, but I will just touch base on it. The concept of middle ummah is considered a unique characteristic of the Muslim nation. In this ayah, the middle refers to the upright and just ummah, as mentioned by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the hadith that I will mention inshallah in a few minutes. This is an important characteristic even in any witness in Islam. If you want to bring a witness in Islam, as we refer to it, we call it shahid adl, which means a just and fair witness. A witness in Islam may lose their eligibility for witness status if they are found to be unfair or untruthful. تسقط شهادتهم. They will lose that type of witnesses. The Greek philosopher Aristotle stated that middle, he was defining middle as a moral criterion يعني يعتبر الوسطية معيار خلقي moral criterion by which the virtues الفضائل are distinguished from the vices الرذائل. He provides examples. He said generosity الكرم being as a virtue because it's the middle ground between two vices, which is the miserliness البخل and extravagance الإسراف. يعني يقول أن قضية الكرم هي فضيلة لأنها هي وسط بين رذيلتين، رذيلة البخل ورذيلة الإسراف. Courage الشجاعة is a virtue because it's the middle ground between the two vices, which is cowardness الجبن and recklessness التهور. Justice, and this is why we use the justice over here. Justice also is considered a virtue because it's a middle ground between injustice الظلم and favoritism المحاباة. So the ayah teaches us over here the ummah of Islam meant to be just and moderate nation if we follow the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This means that as a collective body, it should not oppress or favor anyone in its testimony. في شهادتها. It's important to note also that applies on the Muslim nation as a whole, not necessarily on every individual within it. يعني هنا تعريف في الشرع يقول هي لمجموع الأمة وليس لجميعها. Because you will find members from the Muslim nation who oppress and who favor others in their testimony. And therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the rest of the ayah that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will be a witness on his ummah members if they deviate from justice and moderation. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. Because some of the ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they will deviate as individuals from that aspect. That was regarding the middle ummah in brief. Now, what about the witness of ummah concept? The witness of ummah concept, there are two status of the ummah witnesses. One at the day of judgment and the other one in the dunya. And most of the scholars, when they talk about that ayah, they focus on the witness of the day of judgment because there is a clear hadith talking about that in Sahih al-Bukhari. Regarding the witness at the day of judgment, a clear hadith, as I mentioned, in Sahih al-Bukhari that Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu ardah, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يدعى نوح يوم القيامة فيقول لبيك ربي وسعديك يا رب، يقول لبيك وسعديك يا رب، فيقول هل بلغت؟ فيقول نعم، فيقال لأمته هل بلغكم؟ فيقول ما أتانا من نذير، فيقول من يشهد لك؟ فيقول محمد وأمته، فتشهدون أنه قد بلغ، فذلك قوله عز وجل وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. والوسط العدل. الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم عرف هنا في نهاية الحديث الوسط العدل. Because as I told you, the wasat, it has a different meanings, but over here in this ayah, الوسط العدل. The meaning of the hadith that narrated on Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu Allah, he said that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said that Nuh will be called on the day of judgment and he will be asked, did you deliver the message? He will say, yes. Then the people or the nation, his nation, will be asked, did he deliver the message to you? They will respond, no messenger came to us. So then Nuh will be asked, who will testify for you? Means, do you have any witnesses? So he will say, Muhammad and his nation. Then the Prophet ﷺ, then he said, then you will testify as a nation that he delivered the message. Then Prophet Muhammad ﷺ recited the ayah, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونُ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And then he said, middle is justice. He gave a definition for the middle over here is justice in this specific ayah. On the day of judgment, the Ummah of Islam will testify on the other nations On that day, nobody is allowed to speak or to talk. Even the angels, even Jibreel alayhi salam, without the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا. On that scary day, the Ummah of Islam will testify on the other nations. We will testify on the Persian and the Roman empires, the European and the American nations, nations that we met and we interacted with. This is understandable for us. But how come we testify on nations that we didn't see? How come we testify on nations that we didn't see? This is a valid question. On nations that existed long before our time, such as Nuh and Salih and Shu'aib and other nations. Because there's another hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari talking about different type of prophets and nations, not only the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, as stated in that hadith. Our testimony, as the scholars they said in this hadith and this ayah, our testimony for the people who we didn't see and the nations that we didn't see, they said, our testimony is based on that what we read in the Quran about the stories of the prophets and their people. And we believe that the Quran is the word of Allah and there is no one more truthful than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And based on that, we testify. Based on that, we testify because we have the Quran. We are testifying from our source, the Quran. And we should speak up. And we speak up at the Day of Judgment. Our testimony as a middle ummah put a duty on us to be upright and just, not oppressing or favoring anyone in our testimony. Our witness at the Day of Judgment also put a tremendous duty on us as an ummah to be an active witness in the dunya, in the world. And that's what most of the people, they don't talk about. This is a duty that put us on the day, on the world, in the dunya. Never stay silent by claiming it is not my business. This is a trend. Most of the time we cover our eyes and we say this is not my business. Never stay silent by claiming it is not my business to avoid a trouble and confrontation. But always have the courage to stand up for the truth and to speak only the truth and willing to sacrifice and testifying that truth. Truth that we take from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. Because we have it here in the dunya. And it has multiple truths. Why we don't talk to the people about it? Why we don't testify the same way that we're going to testify at the Day of Judgment when we see something wrong? We need to speak up. We are not a silent witnesses. Our testimony of the truth in the dunya, in the world, is by making da'wah and conveying the message of Allah, the Quran, to the people who doesn't know anything about it, in a clear, wise, and precise way. And to feel the responsibility in delivering that message the way that the companion of Rabi'i ibn Amir, he felt. And he said to the Roman leader, Rustam, when he said and asked him, who are you? He said, نحن قوم ابتعثنا الله لنخرج العباد من عبادة العباد إلى عبادة رب العباد. That we are a people that Allah sent us. He feel that feeling that Allah sent him. Not only the messenger, He sent each one of you. Because you have that truth. We are the people that Allah sent us to free the people from the worship. To free the people from worshipping other people to worshipping the Lord of the people. We should feel the same sense of honor and responsibility of Rabi'i ibn Amir when we deliver that message to the people that we are dealing with them in a daily basis. And failing to do that is suppressing that testimony. هو كتم للشهادة. هو كتم للشهادة. Our testimony of the truth in the dunya, in the world, is to stand up in the face of oppressor and to fight occupation and to fight corruption in all its forms and scales. In all its forms and scales. Our testimony of truth in the dunya is to present people is to present people with a balanced Islamic conduct and lead by example. This means being a good representative of Islam, an ambassador of Islam in all of our actions. To show the positive impact of Islam on our psychological stability and mental health in facing life challenges. People across the world, they notice that testimony. They notice the testimony of our brothers and sisters in Gaza who sacrificed their lives for that testimony. And they managed to see it across thousands of miles, across the oceans, which led many of them to read the Quran and to embrace Islam. We need to do that and to show that to our neighbors and colleagues and our friends from a zero distance. We should do that from a zero distance. Our testimony of the truth in the dunya, in the world, includes demonstrating example of positive impact of Islam on our family stability. What kind of message we are delivering for the people when we don't have a stability in our family? They will see Islam is not presenting solutions. When you practice Islam in your family and make your family stable, you are making a da'wah even for the non-Muslims to see the impact of Islam in your life, leading by example. It's not an internal issue only for you and your wife and your kids. The world is watching. They want to see the positive impact of Islam on our family stability, on societal cohesion, and the balanced moral dimension in education, politics, economy, and all our daily dealings. We need to present these type of solutions to them. We need to contribute that type of da'wah to them. Our testimony of truth in the dunya, in this world, as the only nation who has a preserved book, the Quran, till the day of judgment, put a responsibility on our shoulders to guide the people to the truth and to give them the da'wah to Islam. To defend all the prophets in the dunya and to testify the truth the way that we do on the day of judgment. To defend Isa alayhi salam and his mother, Maryam, from the lies mentioned by the Christians. To defend Musa and Dawood and Sulaiman from the lies of the Jews. It is not our duty only to defend the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's our duty to defend all the prophets as they are part of our nation. Few days ago, we make fasting for Ashura. One of the key words that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said when he arrived to the Medina, and he saw the Jews are celebrating that day and fasting that day. And he realized that they did that because they are celebrating that Musa has been victorious over Fir'aun in that specific day. What did he say? The first word, نحن أحق بموسى منكم. That we have a right in Musa more than you. Because we consider all the prophets are part of Islam and part of the nation of Islam. And the way that we're going to testify and defend them in the day of judgment, it put in our shoulders a way to testify and defend them over here in the dunya. All these forms are part of our testimony of truth in the dunya. أسأل الله تعالى أن يفقهنا في ديننا ويجعلنا ممن يحيون سنة نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم في جميع قلوب المسلمين على طاعته ونصرة دينه وممن مرجعهم في كل أمورهم كتاب الله وسنة رسوله. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ومن سار على نهجه واهتدى بسنته وهديه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, my dear respected brothers and sisters, whatever I mentioned about the testimony and about being a middle ummah, it puts a lot of work on our shoulder, and we shouldn't be silent anymore. And you should do that type of contribution in any place that you go to, even if you go to a place as a transit for 2-3 hours with all the peoples that you are interacting with. You shouldn't be only a citizen to do that. Even if you are resident over here coming for study or within your capacity, within the limitation that you have, within the type of agreement that you have with the country. You need to utilize that area to do the da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be an active witness of Islam on earth. Next month, inshallah, as I promised, we will go more in details about citizenship in Islam from Islamic perspective, and we'll talk about our rights and the rights and duties and the areas of contribution to the Canadian society. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم اجعل اجتماعنا هذا اجتماعا مرحوما واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا من بيننا شقيا ولا محروما اللهم اهدنا لخير الأعمال والأقوال فإنه لا يهدي لخيرها إلا أنت اللهم اجعل خير أعمالنا أواخرها وخير أعمالنا خواتمها وخير أيامنا يوم أن نلقاك اللهم من أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين خيرا فوفقه لكل خير ومن أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين شرا فخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر فإنه لا يعجزوك واجعل تدبيره في تدميره يا رب العالمين اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين وفي السودان وفي كل مكان يا رب العالمين اللهم تقبل شهداءهم واشف جرحاهم وأطلق أسراهم اللهم إنا نسألك من الخير كله عاجله وأجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم ونعوذ بك من الشر كله عاجله وأجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم ونسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقم الصلاة.